Sometimes in life we just suffer. Sometimes it's from being totally withdrawn, or so much stress that we are totally anxious, or so tired that we are totally burnt out. But our current position is not our final destination. No, indeed. There's hope. So whether it's your personal life, your career, your relationship, your business, or your job, we say there's reason to believe again. And we present from Andy's personal development, the breakout room. It's the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Stay tuned for more. Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Breakout Room. I am your host, Handy Charles, and your partner in service and personal development and growth. Remember our three watchwords: health, happiness, and prosperity. And the guest that we have on this particular episode is no stranger to those three virtuous qualities that we provide for you right here live in the breakout room. This episode is entitled, I'm About to Retire. Who will I be with Elizabeth Parsons? And I'm sure for many that is a question that has so many questions behind it. So much concerns, so much doubt, so much fears, so many insecurities. But we're going to clear all that up for you in a moment as I bring you some information with regards to our guest. Elizabeth Parsons is a lawyer, an author, a coach, and a consultant, and her company provides programs and coaching for high achieving entrepreneurs, professionals, and executives to design a plan for their lives when they retire from their current endeavors. They say our clients are never done, and while the freedom associated with the retirement concept is compelling, the notions of pure leisure, aimlessness, and stagnation are not. Sounds like something intriguing and something we should look forward to in our future discussions. So, without further ado, let's welcome our guest live in the breakout room, Elizabeth Zelinka Parsons. Welcome, and how are you today?
Doing great, Andy. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being with us, and we appreciate you, and thank you so much for being here with us. So, Elizabeth, what is your background like with regards to when you began to recognize that there was a need for your services, your core competencies with regards to providing people with information, content, and a way in which they could deal with retirement even before it began? Could you recall when this moment happened for you? Was it an aha moment, or was it a series of incidents, including your personal experience, that led you to this discovery?
Yes, sure. I'd be happy to share it. And it is, in fact, a bit of a story because it all stemmed, of course, as things often do, from my own experience, where I sort of had my own crisis and had to figure it all out. So I
Yeah.
was a lawyer at a big firm and was doing that for 10 years in Washington, D.C. Before I knew it, I had a family and two small kids and an 80-hour-a-week job, and I couldn't make it all work at the level I wanted to. So after, some soul searching, I decided it was time to leave that particular version of the law practice behind. I moved out west with not much of a plan in my head other than I think I've saved a little money, and I'll think of this as if I'm front ending my retirement. I
Okay.
will, sort of get myself the free time I need now, borrow against my retirement, like that was some substantive concept, and get my kids raised a little bit. Then I'll figure out the rest. And so the idea was, in my mind, well, if I've got some money, that kind of answers all the questions. And I think it's a placeholder a lot of working people have, which is I'm working to save money, so one day I don't have to work. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I landed in that new life and found myself utterly at sea, honestly, in a bit of a personal crisis because I had lost my identity in one fell swoop. I'd lost a lot of my, sources of positive self-regard. I'd lost my life structure. And it took me a few years to put all that back together in a new way. And, there's a little more of this story about how I started doing this professionally, but the work and the content and the things I learned that are most fundamental to the work I do now and have been doing for 15 years came from that personal crisis.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing with us, Elizabeth. We appreciate that information. We look at the future, most of us, and sometimes, even though we can't see exactly what tomorrow looks like, we have ideas, we have concepts. You mentioned the fact that if people think that they're going to have enough money after they retire, they don't have to work, then everything is going to be okay. May not be so true after all. How do you, Elizabeth, help people to plan and structure their retirement in such a way that when it actually happens, it is a smoother transition than they just thinking, oh, I have enough money and everything is going to be okay?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think a lot of people don't really even know to ask it. Our
Ah,
society and culture give us a lot of messages that retirement is this Shangri-La, we're going to be living
yeah,
in
yeah,
where everything is just fantastic. And the biggest question, I mean, the thing we all have in our head is, well, it's going to be great because I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whomever I want. The
hmm,
question is, most people I work with don't know what they want. I mean, they've been
wow,
working so hard, often for decades, in service of really wonderful things and people and problems to solve and all the rest. But what they are is fantastic reactors, right, to problems and to the content that comes at them all day long through sometimes hundreds or thousands of emails a day and all that. And what you've got to shift into is becoming a creator. I mean, most of the people I work with are not used to being able to truly author the life they're living because they're
hmm,
busy jumping up every day and putting out fires for other people. So what we do in its most fundamental level is provide a really structured framework and facilitation to guide people through a whole series of questions that often have to do with telling us lots of stories, but so we can get underneath of what they do really want. What have they been doing this all for? What is the sort of life experience they want to live? What are the components of their identity, that are going to make sense in this future life that they're going to sort of craft and build? What do they want to leave behind? How do they repurpose or reinvent all the skills and talents and experiences they have, into new and meaningful ways to be engaged? Because
yeah,
a life of pure leisure, honestly, it's not that interesting after a while. It needs to exist in tension, if you will, with engagement, even if you don't call
right.
it work, right? So we really help people start to plan that, even if it's going to be iterative over time. You need a starting point. A blank canvas, just a huge void, is very intimidating, for most of the people we work with.
Right, I get that. I get that. And I have from the audience somebody already put up a big heart so that they like what you're saying, Elizabeth. And that's good. We appreciate that. Thank you for your comment from the audience. Here's the thing that I want to look at. A lot of people find themselves after retirement getting involved in some other form of work because they think I have so much more left in me.
Yeah.
There's more juice in the tank and I could do something with it. How healthy is that for a transition period after they have actually retired? And is it something that they should pre plan, or is it something that probably if it just comes up, they decide whether they want to get involved or not?
Yes, it's a fabulous question because it can be a huge pitfall. It can also
Yeah.
be a tremendous, next step that's very
Yeah.
vibrant and enjoyable. So the way that we sort of counsel people to think about this is, first of all, look, I don't want to assume the financial security is just in the bag for everybody. I mean, there were certainly stage 2 or stage 3 careers that, people take, and rightfully so, because there is an economic need to do that. And so I'm not diminishing the fact that that can be a big driver, but let's assume, for the purpose of your question, this is a person who does not have to take something in order to complement or supplement the money they've got.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now it's a
Yeah.
question of, do I want to do this? Why am I doing it? What are the reasons that might motivate me to do it? And this is part of what we really dig into, because one of the biggest fears that our clients have is the minute they retire, they're no longer relevant. They're just not going to matter to anybody anymore beyond maybe their close circle of family and friends. They have nothing to contribute, nothing to offer. And so when somebody does come along and offer them an opportunity to jump in and get involved in either another position, whether it's paid or volunteer, there is this strong compulsion to say yes, because
Mm,
it's sort of like, if I don't say yes, I may never get asked again. And what's going to
yeah.
happen to me then?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what we tell people is, you've got to really dig into what has been fulfilling to you about the career you've already had. And let's get clear
Mhm.
about those factors, and let's make a profile of it. Let's figure out what's present when you love it. And then let's get busy thinking more about how to find or create something with those characteristics, as opposed to, again, react to an invitation we get out of fear. And so, what I tell my clients is, most of us in our working lives have a rule, which is yes, right? We get asked to do something and the answer is yes. Your new rule is, you get asked to do something and your answer is no, unless you
Mm.
can prove to yourself it's a yes, because you have probably by now earned the right to do things you want to do, not just
Right.
things you have to do. So
Yeah.
that's some of what we try to help people think about when they, have to almost change their whole mindset about this.
Yeah. I remember traveling, and I met this guy once, and he was telling me about the kind of people that he is associated with are mostly retirees. And he was telling me a little story about the fact that some of them have invested some of their retirement money. And he gave me the impression that the retirement package or nest that they had was pretty huge.
Hmm.
And he said what some of them did is they spent an entire year jumping cruise ships. And he said, it's kind of scary because you're on the ship, you're going wherever it goes from port to port, and it's like a city. Everything is there. You want to shop, it's on the ship. You want to get a show, cinema, whatever, it's on the ship. 3 square meals a day. Whenever they stop somewhere, you go on an excursion or you go on an outdoor um, meeting or something. And he said at the end of the day, he just don't think that he could do something like that. Just have nothing to do when the day comes.
Right.
What kind of perspective is that? And I mean, is it a healthy one, Elizabeth? I mean, even from his point of view.
Well, I got to tell you, setting aside my personal opinion, which is, I think I'd go nuts if that's all I did the rest of my life. Um, a lot of, most everyone we work with wants a break, right? I mean, they've been
Yeah,
working
yeah,
hard. And so one of the things we tell people is, look, maybe think about this next 6 months to a year, call it a sabbatical in your mind, right? It's
yeah,
like, you've
yeah.
earned a break, for heaven's sakes. It's not like you need to jump straight into something else demanding. But that does help to put some boundaries around what this sort of pure leisure period might look like. And it also telegraphs to the rest of the world, look, I might not be done here. I'm going to take a breather, but I'm not done, and I'll be back, and I'm going to ponder what's next for me. And I think it's not that it's unhealthy. You don't want a lot of leisure in your life, or to feel that you've earned it. But what I do think I've learned from working with hundreds of people making this change is that we human beings sort of need to feel on purpose in some way. We need to feel like
Hmm.
we're working toward worthy goals. Like, that's part of what gives us life and meaning and makes us
Yes.
want to be here. And so I do think it's really, really crucial eventually to discover for yourself, what are the worthy goals that I'm still going to work on? And what are the things that are still going to stretch me forward? And probably, just pure entertainment or leisure and fun will fail eventually, I think, for most people to fulfill those needs. That's what we certainly see. And I think we all have stories in our backgrounds of people who retired and kind of went right off a cliff, because my father did, as an example, but they just didn't have those important, purposeful things to focus on. And that they didn't really probably realize how much that fueled them in life.
Yeah. Wow. So there you have it, folks. We've been listening to Elizabeth Zelinka Parsons live in the breakout room. This episode entitled, I'm About to Retire. Who will I be? And she has cleared up even some of those questions that we have to ask at that point in time in our lives by giving her expertise and sharing part of her personal experience. We'll give Elizabeth a time to breathe now for a few seconds as we take a break from one of our associates, findradioguest.com, the place to show yourself, your profile, where you can get other people inviting you to become guests on their podcast, or you can invite other people as guests to become on your podcast, as well as use the opportunity to promote your books and the services that you have. And from time to time, they give you a bump and send you flying all over the social media handles and platforms that are out there. So let's take a break. We'll be right back shortly in just under 30 seconds. FindRadioGuest.com, the place to click to find guests to interview for free. And if you're a radio show booker, podcaster, talk show host, or television producer, then this is the place to get podcasts and radio interviews or promote your books and products as a guest expert sponsor. FindRadioGuest.com. Check it out. Right, there you have it. So, wow, I see another thumbs up and a like in the comments column from our audience. We appreciate your comments and we appreciate your support of Elizabeth Parsons on the program, as it is entitled, I'm About to Retire. Who will I be? Glad to know that we are making connection with someone out there. We appreciate you and your connection to the show. So, Elizabeth, I just want to delve into the book now for a moment that you have written. And I'm going to bring up something on the screen, which, of course, is the front page. And the book is entitled Anchor, a High Achiever's Guide to Thriving in Retirement. How did you come to the conclusion to write the book, and what is the main message you want people to get from the publication?
Yes. So I really, like I guess anyone who's written a book, I feel like it was 10 years in the making, even though I really only started the book project with any actual focus probably now 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But what prompted me to do that was the number of times that, when I was asked what I did professionally and started to describe the work, people would literally say to me, oh, I have 10 people who need to talk to you. I know all these people, my parents need to talk to you, or my brother-in-law needs to talk to you, or all these people who they're about to retire and they're terrified, or they are retired and they hate it, or, I retired young or sold my business and I have no idea what to do with myself now. And it was such an interesting theme every single time I raised it. So it occurred to me that there was probably a way that I could start to put a lot of, the core lessons and even the core frameworks forward to a much broader audience through a book. And of course, even writing the book sharpens your thinking and helps you think more deeply about what you've learned, working in this space. So that was really the goal of it, was to begin to share what I've learned and what my clients have learned and taught me as well about this inflection point with just a much broader group of people, hoping maybe, it would inspire some people to think slightly more expansively about what they could do in this next chapter. And the book itself, I think, is really quite useful to people. I mean, I've certainly had a lot of feedback. I'm releasing it in February because I want to get
Yeah,
through the election and all that. But
right.
the advanced copies people have read, I've gotten a lot of great feedback about it, just feeling very useful and practical, and that it really does give you a framework to think about this. But my feeling is that the goal with the book beyond that is to give people a fresh way to think about this chapter, because right now I think the marketing messages we get about the whole retirement idea is, again, money's all you got to do, right? Save it and you're
Mhm.
good. What I
Yeah.
know to be true is that is a tiny fragment of the actual story. And there's a lot more to unpack and think about if you want it to be a spectacular chapter. And that's what I hope,
Hmm.
right? I just hope
Yeah.
people are able to move into a truly spectacular chapter. I think they've earned it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing indeed. So, with regards to the past 15 years or so that you have been involved in this line of profession, what are some of the major challenges that you see people are faced with, the people that come to you, and maybe you kind of have to take their hands and walk them through the process to get them to the brighter side of the next chapter of their lives? Is there a pattern of challenges that you see, or is it a varied amount of challenges that they have when they come to you with this transition period?
Oh, definite themes. I mean, huge themes. One of
Uh-huh.
which is, I think everybody at the front end of this inflection point is about to have to step out of their comfort zone. And I myself had to kind of learn what that was all about when I did that. I had a sense of great competence and mastery when I was practicing law at that big law firm. I knew exactly what I was about and what I was there to do and how to get my stuff done. And I, base jumped right out of my life, haha, thinking, oh, I'll land on my feet, no problem. Well, I
Mhm.
felt like a complete, fool, to be honest with you, in my life, because
Mhm.
I didn't have all that sense of mastery. I had completely just exited my comfort zone in a really, really rapid and unplanned way. And what I learned about that is that if you don't plan and do it systematically and carefully, you can enter that fight, flight, or freeze space, right? That our brains throw us into when we don't quite know what to do with this massive amount of change we have just embraced without any thought whatsoever. So what I see with all of my clients is this vague, unsettled feeling, right? Like, I
Mhm.
know I'm about to run off a cliff and I don't know what's on the other side. And I don't think that's the optimal way to approach this. And so the idea that you can begin to plan for all kinds of things, the way you're going to structure days, weeks, even a whole year. What are the areas you want to invest in more heavily in your life that have been neglected because you've been working? What are the relationships you want to, reestablish that maybe got neglected because of work? You begin to fill some of these things in, and suddenly you can see a sense of intention and direction. And, suddenly it's like, whoa, this is kind of getting exciting. But then the next theme that comes up is, my clients have sensed mastery for most of their careers, and often they want to go do new things that they aren't masters at yet. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
as quickly as I see them get excited, right, about a new idea, I see the critical part of their mind jump in and say, uh-uh, I'm not going to be good at that.
Mm.
I don't know how to
Yeah.
do it. We're not going there, and I really do have to remind them, no, you're just going to be a student of this for a little while, and eventually you will be a master again. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wonderful. So I'm thinking, and I'm not using this term loosely, but I see many people making something that they call the bucket list.
Mm.
I even remember the movie with Morgan Freeman and some other persons where they had these guys who had retired, and each of them had a similar bucket list, and they all end up doing the same thing at the same time. And it was a fantastic experience. Do you, in your profession, meet people who actually have this list of things that they want to do, but they don't know how, because it's also part of the transition and it's a challenge for them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a story in my book I'll share that's really on point with this question. One of our clients, who'd actually also been a lawyer, a real estate lawyer at a big firm.
Hmm.
When I asked him, if you could do anything in this next chapter and succeed at it, what would you do? And I'm always curious what comes from this. And he said, I'd be a Broadway producer, but I have no way to do that, no clue how to do it, no credentials that would allow me to do it. So I'm not going to do it. And when we started to unpack it, it was like, well, why? I mean, people do it, right? It is doable. And so we
Yes.
just started thinking through, well, who do you know that might actually be able to help you figure this out? Who do you know who's in that business? What are the research steps you would take? And all of a sudden he had a little bit of an action plan to start with. And the next thing you know, I mean, 3 years later, after he was retired, he was on the stage getting his first Tony Award for
Ah,
Hadestown.
yes.
I mean, and so I love his story because he literally almost killed the thing before it even sprouted. But it's not about knowing how to get the whole thing done. It's about knowing what to do next. That's all it is. It's all it ever is what do you do next? And then once you figure that out, do the thing that comes next. And then you're going to keep being able to figure that out until you decide either, I actually don't want to do this, or this is so much fun, and I can't help myself. I'm going to do it. And that's
Yeah.
what I like to see. You can tell when somebody's, hooked on a real dream they want to do.
Yeah. It reminds me of something I saw when I was doing some research, and I was looking at the Black Panther
Mhm.
sequel,
Mhm.
and it spoke about an 89-year-old woman who made her acting debut in that sequel at 89 years of age. I mean, who would have thought, right?
Love it.
And so it brings me to the place where what you're just saying is that you have to start somewhere, right? I mean, don't just blow the whole idea away. And I can imagine what challenges she may have faced, but the thing about it is that the role was so amenable to her
Right.
own natural personality that she just fit right in.
Right.
Why do people, Elizabeth, actually give up and think, nah, it's not gonna happen. I'm too old. I'm washed up. Too many miles on the body. Look at that, 89 years old, and she made her acting debut. How do we get them to switch that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I love that story. Those are my favorite stories in the world because to me, look, as long as you're, on this side of the ground, you're alive and we're here to live. And,
Yeah,
to me, the first mindset you've got to get rid of is this success mindset, right? Like you've just got to leave it because when you're in working life, you get all of these feedback loops like money or bonuses or reviews or your clients are happy. Get all these external feedback loops that tell you whether you're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job. And for most of us, when we get to a place called retirement, we're so used to that we think we still need that in order to validate our actions and the things we're working on. And you really got to set that thing down and just ask yourself different questions. Is what I'm doing interesting? Is it stretching me? Am I learning something new? Am I maybe helping other people? But it's all about your satisfaction with the way you're spending your time and your energy. It's not really about anybody else anymore. And I think if you can make that one shift, you have a completely different report card for yourself. And even just, am I having fun? I mean, why is that not a good measure? And
yeah,
so again, and I'm talking about people, who really don't need to go out and find some way to supplement income. And they're thinking about, if I could do anything and have a spectacular, decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, what are these new things I want to do, and go for it? Why wouldn't you? You've checked the success box, leave that behind. It's very freeing. But it's a process, you don't just flip a switch.
yeah. Because we are not machines; we are human beings, and we have to deal with all the emotions and the ecosystems around us. There are three names that came to my mind as you were speaking. The first one is Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. The second one is Warren Buffett.
Yep.
And the third one is Larry King. And I'm thinking, these guys don't seem to have retirement anywhere near in their future,
Right.
but they're not exactly spring chickens. Is it difficult sometimes for some people to realize, hey, enough is enough? I need to switch? Are there some people who just can't retire no matter what happens?
Yes, you've raised a really interesting point, and I think it comes up more in organizational contexts where you've got people who still love what they do; they're still good at it, but for whatever the reasons are, market conditions or culture of the organization, they are going to be asked to do what is the right thing for that organization and move on earlier than they might otherwise choose. And I will just say that
Yeah.
that's happening, more and more
Hmm.
in various professions. And it is about opening seats of opportunity for younger people. And, we get that. I mean, that's part of what you have to do sometimes. But I think this transition is toughest for those people because in their minds, they're nowhere near done, and I increasingly work with people who are in their mid 50s facing this. And that's why the work we do has got an even stronger imperative behind it, because you are sure not done at 55. I mean, I'm sorry, you got a lot of gas in the tank. So it is it really important for those people to realize that they can build a new, vibrant, interesting, challenging future, probably leveraging a lot of what they've already done in their career, but just putting it forward in new, fresh, interesting ways. But that takes work, right? It takes
Yeah. Yeah.
intellectual work, it takes emotional work, it takes thought. And I think for a lot of people, it's hard to get out of your own head and do this without some sort of facilitated help. So, whether it's us or the book or somebody else who does this work, I think it can be incredibly helpful just to have somebody help you get out of your own head about it. But yeah, it
Mm.
comes up all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing, Elizabeth. We appreciate you and the information. So, you've been listening to Elizabeth Zelinka Parsons as she tells us about the challenges that people face with retirement. This episode in the breakout room entitled, I'm About to Retire, Who Will I Be? We'll take another break for one of our associates, Phoebe Trotman, who was a past athlete and now is an author. And she's going to help us advertise for our follow up podcast this evening entitled Breaking Out of Depression at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. That episode will begin. So we'll be back in about 1 minute or so. Stand by.
Hi, friends. Phoebe Trotman here. I wanted to just thank Andy Charles and the team for what they're doing with their broadcast. One of the things that stood out to me is that they truly care. They are there every single Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, sharing what they have gone through, their experiences. They have guests who have gone through real challenges, and those guests are sharing what they've done to push through those challenges. And but one of the things the reason I want to encourage you to tune in is because it helps you realize you're not alone. There is a community of people who care. There are people out there who've gone through challenges and they're sharing what they did to push through. And so it's a show of hope. It's a show of encouragement. It's also a show where you can learn. You can learn a tip or two to help you along your journey. So I encourage you again, tune in every single Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. They have a great lineup of guests. They themselves, they share their experiences, and I know it will help you through your journey. So I wanted to wish you continued success, good health, and many blessings in 2024 and beyond.
Right. So we thank Phoebe Trotman for helping us there with that advertisement. So look out for that, folks, at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. We will have Breaking Out of Depression. But for now, it's the breakout room with Elizabeth Zelinka Parsons giving us some fantastic information and nuggets on the challenges of retirement. This episode entitled, I'm About to Retire, Who Will I Be? In looking at retirement, Elizabeth, there are some people who would say that it is another phase in life that they look forward to. And there are some people who say, nah, I'm not really looking forward to it. And there's this contrasting opinions or differences of opinions that they have. When you do your work and you do your research with the people that you serve, how do you challenge or manage the challenge that they have that gives them the wrong idea or the wrong impression? I say that because I hear some people say, my friend retired, or they know some people who retired, and it's a scary thing. They're miserable. They don't know what to do when the day comes. We have a situation where we live here in the Caribbean where some people have retired from the public service. And sad to say, soon after they retired, they died.
Yeah.
They had no complications before. They were going to work every day, putting in the hours, doing all the things they needed to do. But as soon as retirement came up, it's as if they did not know what to do, where to go, how to deal with it. And as opposed to, and I think this is in the minority, there are some people who feel it's a smooth transition. But what about those who have it so rough? And the whole idea out there is that this is something so scary. How do we deal with it? Do you
Yeah.
have that challenge that you have to face with, and how do you manage them in that challenge as a professional?
Yes, absolutely. I'd say a good percentage of the people that choose to work with us are coping with that very concern.
Yeah.
They've either seen really bad role models, or the image they have of retirement in their own mind doesn't fit with who they think they are. They're like, I'm not a
Yeah.
retiree. I'm not going to sit on my porch all day. What's going to happen? And so one of the things, funny enough, that comes up a lot is that people say, can we just not use the word retirement? And I laugh because I know it's a terrible word, actually. It sort of makes it sound like, you're a piece of equipment that's going to be
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
commissioned.
yeah.
Um, and so the funny thing is we often will switch to the analogy of a graduation. It's more like another graduation, right? And so think of it that way. Just completely flip the script and imagine that all you're doing is graduating out of a really intense, long, but fruitful undertaking called your career. And there's something waiting for you after that, right? Like, you don't graduate from college and imagine yourself withering up and dying. You imagine yourself taking on fresh challenges and sort of going out into the world with, all the skills and friendships and whatever you've amassed through your experience, and going and doing something new and interesting. Well, take that same attitude with you now and get curious. Don't think the world is going to close its doors on you. It's only going to do that if you do that. But it's
Mm,
also, no one else is going to take care of your future for you. And so you can't expect everybody to know what's in your mind or what your aspirations are. And if you don't even know what they are, how will they? So
yeah.
the work to figure all this out is real and it's valuable. And what I see, I always know when we have fully flipped the script, because people go from unsettled or even anxious, to really excited. And now they almost can't wait to get on with it. They're like, all right, like I've got 3 more months of this job. Let's just get it done with. I'm ready to move on and step into my next chapter because this is starting to sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Um, so that's, honestly, it's conceptual, but it makes a big difference. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so I have a comment, but it's more like a greeting from Loretta Packett. She says, "Good day to you all. Good day to you too, Loretta." She celebrated her birthday recently. I think you're still celebrating. Thank you for your continued commitment and support to the breakout room. We have two other guests online as we speak. She also says, "Long time, miss a lot. Now back from the hospital." Oh, I hope everything is okay with you and the rest of the family, Loretta, as you continue to strive and overcome some of the challenges that you're facing. We thank you for your continued commitment and your support. I'm thinking about someone, Elizabeth, who has retired, and I'm wondering if you ever had to deal with this kind of scenario. They come to you and they say, I have spent, or I have dedicated, or I have committed 30 odd years to this particular organization. And they give me this letter and tell me it's time to retire,
Mhm.
but I have absolutely nothing to show for it. What should I do? How do I deal with this? Where do I go from here?
And so when you say nothing to show for it, do you mean,
Like financially?
okay, in other words, they really are needing something else to do?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And so that is an issue occasionally we confront with people. And the biggest fear, and this, I'm going to assume this person, let's just say, maybe they are closer to traditional retirement age when this
Hmm.
happens. And so
Yeah.
their fear when they express it to us is, I think that I'm past the age where anybody's going to want to hire me. So what's going to happen? I mean, I don't know how I'm going to solve for that. And one of the things we see people do that probably is less productive when they're in this kind of situation is going to look for jobs, look for openings, because you're not wrong that at that stage, most of what's being advertised as an open position is really designed for younger people with less experience and less, fewer accomplishments. So what we usually say to people is you're going to have to create this for yourself, but you must believe you can, because we've seen it happen many, many times. And what you've got to do is get very clear about what your strongest contributions have been, what your best strengths and skills are. You've got to have stories ready for what you are extremely good at and what you've accomplished and achieved. And then you've got to work your network. I mean, you've got to go create this through the people and the relationships you have, because those people know who you are and they know what you can do and they will vouch for you. And rather than beat your head against the wall, sending applications and resumes to online positions, you need to be out there meeting with people, talking about what you want and what you can do. And that's when we see things happen, especially for people who are more experienced, because the open positions are not a fit for them. And it can feel demoralizing, and you can lose your confidence very quickly if you send 20 resumes out and get not a single bite. I mean, suddenly you're in a doom spiral. Whereas if you're out having conversations, talking with people and asking them, what advice do you have for me and who else should I talk to? Before you know it, you will be speaking to somebody who says, I know somebody who's got to talk to you. I know somebody who needs you. That's how these things happen. It's our very, very best strategy, and it really does work.
Yeah, great, wonderful. So Loretta has a special greeting for you. She says, "Good day to you, Elizabeth." Okay, get me jealous here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Thank you, Loretta. I'm sure Elizabeth appreciates that. What is the basic? Oh, she's following up on what you're saying.
Yeah,
So true. Face to face applications, it's important. Yeah,
very.
yeah, yeah. That human interaction makes a big difference. Wow. What is your basic philosophy in life, Elizabeth? Is it um, tempered by religion? Is it by morals? Is it by ethics? Is it Plato, Socrates, Gandhi thing, Nelson Mandela? Uh, how do you develop your philosophy for life? What is the catalyst that helps you make decisions about stuff like that?
Oh, I love that question. Well, I think I consider myself a pretty spiritual person, but I'm
Uh-huh.
also very open-minded, because I think everybody's spirituality has a place, and it's all sort of ties back to something real.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'd say is I think we live in a universe that's motivated by love, and we're all connected in some way. And if we were all out there really hoping the best for each other, the world would be a much better place. But I try to do that, and genuinely hope the best for everybody else out there, and believe truly, that somebody else's good fortune somehow adds to the overall good fortune that we all experience, and particularly when it's good fortune motivated by love. Love, kindness, that's what I'm about. So I really like to throw my heart in with the people I work with, because I care deeply that they find their way to a satisfying, stage of life. And I think loneliness is about the worst feeling almost any of us can have, and particularly when we're struggling. And so, the other thing is, when you realize that we're all in this together, none of us is suffering alone, and we've all suffered through the same things that we think others have suffered through what we think we're dealing with by ourselves. There's just sort of nothing like unburdening yourself and saying it like it is, which is, I don't know what to do right now. I'm lost. I'm scared. I feel, like I've lost my confidence. How do I get help? There's nothing
Yeah.
more freeing than that.
Yeah. Wonderful. So we just have about 25 seconds to go. and we'll put up your information there that
Great.
we got on the stage. So, but just tell people how they can make contact with you and your services and the book launch. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sure. Well, probably the best place to find me is LinkedIn. You'll search Elizabeth Zelinka Parsons and you'll find me instantly. You are welcome to connect with me there. All of my companies are showcased there. The book will be coming out in February, but I do have advanced purchase links that will be on my website author page at oncoraco.com. And of course, I would be honored and consider it a real privilege if anybody's interested in taking a look at the book. You can certainly get 2 free chapters there too.
Ah, wonderful, 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 wonderful indeed. Thank you for sharing, Elizabeth. And thank you for being such an engaging and wonderful guest, giving so much quality to our people with regards to the services that you offer. We're about to wrap up on this episode of Breaking the Breakout Room, rather, and I'm about to retire. Who will I be with Elizabeth Parsons? Until next time, folks, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, together with my guest, Elizabeth Zelinka Parsons, saying so long, Godspeed, God bless, and choose to reach out to Elizabeth should you have the challenge of thinking about what will happen when you're about to retire. Okay? We see you next time. Stay safe, stay blessed, and Godspeed to all of you. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me see. I think that's about it.